All right, lads, welcome back to the Daily Close. Today, we are going over our famous, or soon to be famous, technical analysis that we hope that when you watch, you'll get some good alpha from this, know how to work in markets, especially in these current conditions right now when there's a lot of FUD going about. So please listen to the end. I think you'll get plenty of information that's going to help you navigate these waters. Remember that we're not financial advisors, so take everything with a grain of salt. Make sure you do your own research. Of course, it really helps us get noticed if you can like, comment, and subscribe. Hit that bell notification as well. If there's any other coins you want us to cover, let us know. We always like doing something wild on the end, so stay tuned for more. But let's jump into BTC because I think there's a lot going on here. I give an indication of how the market is currently moving right now. Just gonna move this right there. Okay, so I'm actually gonna start over at the weekly chart for BTC dominance right now. I've said in the previous video as well that this can tend to be an indication of when dominance is going down, people are typically going to altcoins and other assets, and when it starts going back up, meaning there's more money in Bitcoin, it could be an indication that people are going to more bedrock fundamental assets like Bitcoin to put their money in, especially if they're worried about market price volatility. So I mean, obviously BTC has been on the downtrend for the past number of weeks, but just for the most recent history here, we're getting a slowly but surely a little bit higher highs going up, meaning that Bitcoin dominance is picking up. If we draw it back down here, actually, let's do the 4-hour chart. Wow, that's a terrible thing to look at. Let me expand this here. Jesus. We can see some higher upswings going right now. You can also see based on, Jesus, let's get this a little bit better here. You see dominance picking up a little bit more now. We see on the RSI as well that we have a bit of an upswing here. Although we're seeing a little bit more of the bears stepping in here. Its current trajectory is trying to break going forward upwards. I think this is just an indication, if you heard in the news, more FUD coming out of China, about more regulations are coming down or cracking down on other exchanges as such. So, when this comes to bear, typically people might start to flee to more safer assets. I think while we wait for these news to pass over, we might be seeing a bit more uptrend, if not a little bit consolidation before we figure out what's going to go next when things start to settle down. So then when we turn it over to Bitcoin, USD, we see very much the same kind of pattern here. No, actually, this is on the 4-day. If we go back to the weekly, there must be a faster way to get this ratio better on my screen, but just on the weekly here, we did have a rise in Bitcoin, and then we're kind of pumping that back down just a little bit. Fortunately enough, the bears are buying it back up, so obviously some more money is coming in Bitcoin. If we look at our Bollinger Bands as well, we are trading over the 20-day average here. Typically, I hope to see, first, if we're fortunate, a bounce off of, actually, it's almost close to a bounce off the 20-day moving average. We look at, if I look at a couple of lines here, next, it almost could have gone down to the next low support here, more or less just touched. And so, I'm thinking it's very possible that it could just bounce back up from this area upward. Sell pressure is, or I guess the volume is creeping up, but it's not like anything too drastic. We're still in the middle in the RSI here as well. I would say, if I were also to move this over to the Ichimoku indicator here as well, I mean, we're still definitely in the green. And in our base, and here's our change line here, we could be, based on the current buying, that's kind of pushing this price a little bit back up past the bottom wick. If it keeps going this direction, it could be perhaps people, again, said before, getting to a safer asset, B, buying the dip. A lot of these factors need to be put into play when considering what the current action is going to look like. However, just what I'm seeing here in the news and what I'm seeing based on the chart, I wouldn't be too surprised to see Bitcoin starting to make some moves back up. This is on the weekly though. We move it down to 4 hour. Okay, here we go again. All right. Yeah, I mean, this just basically confirms most of what I've just been noting as well here. We did have some volatility in the past number of days going back down, and then we're going back up here again, and then had a dump. We had a bit of consolidation, but we're popping back up again. I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, it is a bearish pattern we're seeing here in terms of lower highs, but at least in terms of lows, we are at a higher low, slightly lower low. Depending on how this closes, the next couple confirmations, we might have a general idea of where this might, where the price might feel like it wants to be heading. I guess it is under the red. Ichimoku indicator did cross down. So yes, it did cross down just a little bit past the baseline here as well. So let me just expand that so it's actually clear to see. So I mean, depending again on the next couple few confirmations, we see this blue line cross back over that baseline. That's probably a good sign. It's going to pump back up. Taking this off, we go to the MAs. Yes, yeah, we probably want to see a bit more of these crossing back up in the upward trend. So I wouldn't expect anything happening too soon. It's just actually there's a lot of, you put too much of these on here, you just can't see what's going on. But I found that the more indicators you got on, the better your trading strategy.
The better you trade, yeah.
Yeah. If you can't even see the price, I mean, you're obviously doing something right. But I mean, just simply enough. I mean, our previous moving averages might be seeming a little bit negative, but we have some good volume coming up. RSI is pointing up. It looks like the bears aren't really winning on this 4 hour wick right now. So, I mentioned in the previous video, in these kind of times, you just you need to wait for a few more confirmations to have an idea of where the market's going to go. If I were you in this spot, I would look at where the next confirmations would come after here. And if they're starting to close a bit higher, it might be a good opportunity to buy in, especially if some of that FUD still lingers. It might be an opportunity for you to jump into Bitcoin and make some good quick trades. Likewise, if you're going long or making short positions, especially during these days when there's been a bit more volatility, you need to make sure you have your stop orders in place and your take profit level set. Otherwise, you're going to be very, very sorry. But yeah, that's what I see here on Bitcoin. I mean, always give me bullish on Bitcoin. It's fundamentally a solid coin. People trust it. Governments like it. And so there's always going to be money made in this space here too. But tread carefully and make sure you do your own research so you don't fall into a nasty pit. But yeah, that's my part here. I'm going to pass on over to Gojo so he can give you an overview of Ethereum.
Cool. Thanks for that, Crypto-pleb. Just to follow up, I mean, with Bitcoin making these moves, you also know that a lot of other coins are impacted. If not, the impact is magnified on a lot of these coins. Today, I just wanted to share a little bit about ETH. I want to simplify what I'm looking at here because basically, if we're just looking at the last couple of days, we've been trading in somewhat of a sideward fashion. There hasn't been any significant moves since the 24th. I think we've been normalizing after a very, a relatively volatile week. What I am seeing though is that ETH has been bouncing off of this 2.7K support and struggling to break past 3K, which is going to be quite difficult for us for a number of reasons. And the reason why, the area that I'm going to look at specifically, or the indicator that I'm looking at specifically, is the 50-day EMA. So for those of you who are looking to use EMAs, SMAs in your own technical analysis. I just want to confirm one more time the difference between the two, because sometimes they can look quite similar. If we're looking at the SMA, essentially, or SMA and EMA, the difference lies in how sensitive they are to the data that they're using. So SMA is calculated using the average of the price data, whereas EMA gives a lot more weight to current data. And I think for me, if I'm looking at the one EMA that is helping me identify mostly what could happen with ETH, I'm looking at this 50-day EMA. So the reason for that, why are we doing this? Because if I'm looking at on the daily, if I'm just looking at the daily, the orange line representing the EMA, the 50-day EMA, recently it's been acting as resistance for our Ethereum price here. And if I'm just going to look at some recent history, when the last time we broke below the 50-day EMA, we were quite bearish with Ethereum for a few months. Actually, the first time we broke down here, we attempted to break a couple of times, but ultimately we stayed under, and this lasted for about 2 months. The moment we did and turned this resistance into support, we ended up going on this massive run up. And it was only until recently when we broke it one more time, which could indicate that we might be approaching a little bit more of the bearish territory for at least the near future. I think what we see for this 50-day EMA again is, while it provides resistance, it also provides a lot of strong support, especially when we're looking at this massive run from the beginning of or end of December last year. The 50-day EMA acted as a very nice support for our price here. I also want to look at, and I know that some people are either fans or non-fans. I think you can only be one of two when it comes to fractals. And so by fractals, I mean, is this perhaps a magnified version of something that happened in the past? So if I'm just going to look, for example, at September of last year, and if I were to go down more closely, let's do the 4-hour just to make it a little bit more visible. If I were to look at September 2020 last year, I think something quite similar happened. Oops, let me do daily one more time. So in September of last year, one thing that we observed was there was a very similar movement in the charts for us. So if you're looking at this particular portion, this particular portion right here, we noticed the price. Again, if you look at this area as it is right now, it looks very similar to what we're experiencing at the moment. September is where we are right now, where we saw a run up until a few weeks ago. We dipped for the first time under this 50-day EMA, and we stayed quite bearish, similar to what happened before that. When we broke under this 50-day EMA, this lasted for also a couple of months. Again, fractals are certainly no certain indicator of what will happen, but we can always learn from what's happened in the past. So it is quite scary, some of these similarities. One thing that we can pull from this, if history were to repeat itself, as long as we break this, or since we've broken this 50-day EMA, we might be in this bearish sort of market structure for a while, maybe in consolidation for a bit, before we ever make, or before we go out and make a move upward again. If I were to just pull out again and go back to where we are right now, you'll notice immediately some of these similarities. But the other thing that I would look at is our fibs. So if I were to draw it for this price range, a question that you might have is when would be a good time then to look at ETH and perhaps buy in? If you are looking at this long term, the same advice applies with any coin really, is that you want to accumulate during these bearish phases. So there are a few things that we can look at in addition to the fibs. So the first thing that I want to look at is we now see the golden pocket right here, which is in between 2,500 to 2,600. I'd say if you are looking to get as low as you can, getting in, this would be an ideal space to do it. I would also note that it would be a good idea to perhaps DCA your way in, since I don't think it is a bad idea to perhaps start stacking some coins right now. The other thing that we notice here is if you're looking at the previous head and shoulders pattern, which is created from here, we've seen that it's still technically playing out right now, and it hasn't completely been invalidated just yet. If we want to see it completely play out, there is always the worst case scenario where we go down perhaps to this range here. Maybe if we cross down to the 0.786, then that spells quite bad news for us. But for the meantime, I think one thing that we can see as a potential support is going to be this golden pocket area right here. Best case scenario is we could go down here and then potentially bounce, go up, bounce a couple of times, and then break through the 3K mark. But for now, it is quite difficult to tell. So not enough action for me to make any conclusive claims, but I think one thing I am looking at, very simply, if you just want one indicator to tell you a little bit about ETH's price action, is that 50-day EMA and of course your fibs. So that's it for me with ETH.
Cool.
That's what's up.
Yeah, the market's not looking too hot right now. I mean, we're just consolidating at the lows. I think if we really need to hold this level, especially for Bitcoin, or we'll probably see, 38K, 32K again.
Here we go again.
So fingers crossed. So one of the coins that I wanted to cover today, and it's moving, quite interestingly actually, in the opposite direction to the rest of the market, is Tezos. So I'm going to share my screen. Give me 2 secs. You see my screen?
There we go.
Yep.
Yeah.
So Tezos is interesting because it's kind of like been moving on its own, regardless of what the rest of the market is doing, like Bitcoin and Ethereum. Usually most of the altcoins follow what they do, but Tezos has been a relatively strong performer throughout the whole sort of like dump and the consolidation, and you can see I'm on the weekly chart here. I'm not bullish. Sorry, I'm not bearish on something that looks like this. Long-term timeframes, we had a nice consolidation down here with low volume, which is what you want to see. We had a change in volume profile on the weekly. So this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 consecutive weeks of pretty decent volume, which is nice when you get a breakout, which confirms that we are actually breaking out and it's not a fake out. What I really want to see on here for me to get bullish and for us to hit new all-time highs is for us to close the weekly, which is in around 12 hours 18 minutes, on new all-time highs. So the previous all-time high on a weekly close was about $7.13. If we close this weekly candle above 7.13, then I would actually target, let's get some targets out. If I draw the fibs here, I would actually target move back up to 8.40, and then maybe like $10. So yeah, that's if we do close on new all-time highs on the weekly. If we don't, I'd expect us to get rejected from here again and maybe consolidate under the new all-time highs and then try again for a breakout up to the targets that I mentioned, 8.40 being the first one. RSI is looking good. We don't have any divergences right now, so it's kind of neutral. But we are in the, if I zoom in on this, we are in the bullish control zone, which is always a good sign. And remember, this is long-term time frame, so you're not going to get a move. I'm saying 8.40 and 10, not necessarily within the next couple of days, but maybe in the next couple of weeks, next few weeks, is probably what you want to see. If the market does take a tumble, I would expect Tezos to actually also move back down with the market, probably to, this level here where we had the weekly open back in September the 6th, around the golden pocket area as well. 550 is the area that you're looking for if we do retrace 530 to 550. Stock RSI pretty oversold right now. We crossed down and potentially crossing back up again depending on where we close this weekly. Again, if we close on new all-time highs, I expect this to cross back up, but we are in sort of like the overbought area at the moment. But that's not to say that we can stay there for a while. Like if you look at this area here, we stayed there for quite a while back in Feb 2021 this year. So it's in a bull market, you know, if you look at, you can't always go off overbought and oversold. You have to look at different indicators as well. So moving down onto the daily, let me just delete this fib for now. The daily tells a little bit of a different story. In terms of market structure, you have your low here, you have your high, you have your higher low, and we've kind of made a another high here. It's not yet been confirmed, but if we do create a high here, this would be technically a lower high. I would be on a watch for lower lows, although we could start to, one possibility is we could start to form sort of like a symmetrical triangle and start ranging in between there. So we could do something like this before we either break up or break down. That's the sort of scenario that I'm looking on the daily. But we have, you can see on the RSI, we have some 1, 2, 3 drives of hidden bullish divergence. If we can get back into the bullish control zone, that would be a very good sign. And we have played out a good part of that hidden bullish divergence. We have volatility as well, which is still relatively high. Did get up to 91%. Would like to see that get above 95 before I call like a real local top. Stock RSI is looking good. It's pointing upwards in the upwards direction. And you can see here we can actually form a trend line on the stock RSI as well. We've got a good sort of support here. If we can hold this support, that would be also a good sign for the daily. So that's what I would look out for. If we do see any signs of weakness here before making new all-time highs, I'd expect us to come back down, maybe test the bottom of this ascending triangle. That's it for the daily. Let's check actually where our pivots and our moving averages are. So if we look at the pivot, I like using pivots because it's kind of like a cheat. It tells you where support and resistance is. This is the weekly pivot. So the P here stands for the pivot, R stands for resistance, S stands for support. You see we broke the pivot. We're kind of trading in this range right now. I'd really like to see us start closing dailies above here. Then I'll be confident in saying that we'd make a move up to the R1 at least, which is 780, and then oh, well, what do you know? It's R2 is 840. The same as what the previous fib was telling us. So that's it for the pivots. Let's check our moving averages here. Again, I'm not going to be bearish on something that's trading above all moving averages. You see we had a bit of a squeeze with the moving averages, which tells us that volatility is imminent, which then we saw a break to the upside. Yeah, I mean, we're getting a bit of a decrease in volume on this downside, and in general, which is good to see. If we do get a breakout, I'd like to see volume start to increase. At least above this sort of line here. Breakout of volume would be nice. Let's check the 12-hour and the 4-hour, and then we'll call it a day. 12-hour, again, looking good. Similar structure to the daily. Not much to look at here. Although on the stock RSI, we are falling down a little bit in the downwards direction. Maybe a little bit of a retrace before we try for new all-time highs on the 12-hour as well. On the short-term time frames, 4-hourly, we are above the middle of the RSI, which is good. I'd like to see us move into the bullish control zone for us to start printing new all-time highs here. Again, if we draw the fib just very quickly on the 4-hour, we kind of get the sort of the similar targets that we had before. On the 4 hour, it's showing 870, and then maybe move up to the 1.618, which is about, again, $9.8, $10. So there's a lot of confluence there. Short-term time frames, the 4 hourly stock looks like it wants to come back up. Again, there's a bit of a trend line on the stock here. If we can hold here, it would be a good sign. Volatility is coming down on the BBWP, falling below the EMA, which is the white line that you see here, which is good. You want to see decreased volatility when things are moving down. If you see an increase, that's always a sign that the market is going to tank. But yeah, generally Tezos I thought was interesting because it was moving in contrast to the rest of the market. I think that, we covered the project, one of the projects on Tezos, which is Hen. I think that's one of the reasons why, we're seeing a big move in Tezos at the moment as well. But yeah, that's it for me. If you're looking for shorts and longs, just be careful in this market because it is very choppy right now. We're getting big stop hunts in both directions. So yeah, I mean, this is more for educational purposes. I hope you learned something.
Yeah, that's a lot of information right there. It's actually quite cool that Tezos seems a bit agnostic to movements of ETH and BTC. It seems to be moving on its own time. Looking very, that's definitely more bullish looking than BTC and ETH. So it's definitely a good project to look into. But yeah, this is the daily close. We talk about very interesting projects. We keep an eye on the market, give you some information about how we wade our way through these choppy waters. But of course, just this is financial advice. So just make sure you just do your own research. So you can protect yourself. Again, we already hear stories about people taking big, long positions and then getting margin called or liquidated. So don't be going too crazy. And if you're going to be betting hard on the upside, make sure you make some stop losses to cover your butt, especially if you can't catch that. So, but that's everything here on the daily close. We'll try to be doing these. We do these every week. We're thinking about doing more of them too, keeping you as mostly informed as possible. It really helps us as well if you like us, like our video, give us a comment what you think we should cover for our wild card every week as well. If you can hit that bell notification, you can be the first person to know about our next uploads. Be the first one to comment. We always like to interact with our people, so that'd be great if you're one of the first ones. And then yeah, just wait for next week for more. And until then, this has been the daily close, and may the pump be with you.
May the pump be with you guys.
Yes.
Goodbye.